We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, our communities, and our workplaces are really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is MJ Maurer. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm an account executive at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Elliot Altomare, the manager of people and organizational culture. Let me just go ahead and restart that because I am struggling with this. Okay.
I mean,
I was just like, this is the manager, Elliot.
my title might be different in a week from now. Whatever.
Who knows? Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Try that one more time. We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is MJ Maurer. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm an account executive at AllVoices. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Elliot Altomare, who is the manager of people and organizational culture at the Transgender Law Center. Elliot, to kick things off, tell us about yourself, including your pronouns, and how did you answer this question when you were younger? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Hooray. Hi, I'm Elliot. My pronouns are they and them, but also in lots of places he and him because I'm tired lots of the time. And I live in like a rural spot. It's easier. I'm a typical weirdo. And when I was little, I told everyone I wanted to be a zookeeper. And like was completely dead set on it all the way through most of college.
I love that. So from zookeeper to people leader, tell me about how your personal journeys led you to, being the manager of people and organizational culture at TLC.
Great. Definitely. People leader's funny. Thank you. But no, I just hang out with people. We all just get to hang out with each other. I don't know. Animals was being overwhelmed by people, but wanting to do a bunch of caregiving and respond to a world that I knew was vaguely in trouble. And from that kind of evolved. Zookeeping turns out to be way too hard to get into, and I wasn't up for that. But talking about how people get along with other people is not a thing lots of people were doing. And so I kind of found my way into operations and systems because I'm fascinated by essentially how we take care of each other. I think how we talk to each other and communicate is how we are taking care of each other. And so it's still zookeeping. It's just we're the critters that we're taking care of.
I love that. A totally different form of zookeeping and taking care of each other and working with each other.
Yeah.
There's a whole world out there of problems that we're all trying to solve and address. If you could pick one kind of central theme, what's something that you're aiming to solve right now?
My big focus is about how do we solve really necessary problems with each other when we haven't been given the space or time to build real relationships with each other. And that's either because, we're working in an organization where everyone changes jobs somewhat frequently, or because we're talking about where we live with our family and it takes a really long time for us to figure out how to be real people with our own family. And in the midst of all of these awkward spaces where we don't quite know how to be really deep, real people, whatever, with each other, how do we still answer questions that require us to go back and forth and layer information on top of each other? And we've got so much incredible wisdom when we all combine it, but knowing how to combine it is really hard, especially after 2.5 years of COVID, making it so that whatever being people meant to begin with is a little extra weird now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's especially the last couple of years have been extremely difficult. And you have really leaned into this idea of how do we be that real, authentic person. You've also really leaned into how does your organization lead and private organizations lead into those goals, in terms of like the role of how an employer is creating equity, what do you think the, private organizations are playing? What role are they playing in creating that equity in the world?
The framework I use is so much of one of harm reduction, is about what level of harm are we as the organization saying that we're going to reduce for our employees.
Okay.
That's how I see health insurance. Like, we have good health insurance, whatever that means, is still harm reduction over having no health insurance, and good health insurance can still bankrupt you. Like, is
Mhm.
not is not hard for that to happen. And so health insurance is one of like so many different ways we're exposed to these overlapping layers of harm. Organizations ask us to come and work for them and do this work, but I think that doing the work we're asking people to do requires them to be like whole people whose needs have been met, which means a higher than normal bar for what level of harm are we trying to reduce for our staff, and what level of historical harm are we taking into consideration, that
Mhm.
we're not hiring people who don't come from whole lives of experiences. Um, we don't hire people who don't come from generations of experiences that change who we are and how we show up and what our needs are. And being real about that and trying to figure out how we make our organization a place where, I like the phrase, it is not a place for healing, but healing is possible here. I have a source for that. Came from something in Holding Change by Adrienne Marie Brown. So one of the pieces in that, our organizations are not homes and they are not places we are going for healing.
Mhm.
But if healing can't happen there, I think it means that just means we're stuck in some version of reactive cycles of harm with some people around us. How do we make our organizations places where those instinctual reactive patterns and cycles we get to finally break out of, so we can do the work with each other, where when we get to say, here's how I see the thing, the system, here's what I know, we feed information into each other. That conversation, what happens there is amazing, is
Mhm.
transformative. I love that. I think that requires that we make sure people don't have a stomach ache because they can't afford um, medical bills. Or as the world changes more and more, I'm thinking about how deeply interconnected we are with just how many households are woven together. Like, how many people affect the lives of our employees, how much bigger our families are than whatever our insurance covers.
Yeah.
Um, what does it mean to like hold space for all the different stomach aches our people might be coming to work with? And which of those do we as the employer think we can help lessen, and how?
I
And a
love.
big part of, oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
I mean, a big part of that is just looking at, I don't know, I came from 350.org, which was a climate change organization, and looking at what is predicted for societies when climate disasters happen more frequently, the level of like internal displacement, the tightening of like economic screws on budgets that have nothing already, right? The running out of credit cards that happens, the what does it mean to support employees that I expect will all be more and more connected to communities of mutual aid for the foreseeable future? I expect that need to keep rising. I expect the people I work with, myself included, to be more and more drawn into how do we keep people alive in a world that's going to get harder.
Mhm.
And I think our workplace expectations need to change a lot. And when we think about showing up for the whole employee in that world, I'm excited about answering that question.
Yeah.
And I think that answer looks really different than what we were taught it looked like to support people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, what a great segue into kind of what we had planned on talking about next, was kind of showing up for that full life of the employee. 47% of employees are reporting that their stress is higher than anything they'd previously ever experienced in their career right now. Only 37% agreed that their organization understood what they needed in their personal lives and in their families. And what you're saying is that interconnection is just going to keep increasing, and that harm reduction is just going to be even more important in showing up for these employees. So how are you showing up for these the full lives of your employees at the Transgender Law Center? What is that you're thinking about in those policies and plans and goals that you're setting?
So we're experiencing right now just a thing that's already live is just the 3-week slowdown that happens, where there's 2 weeks of just everyone trying to take as much time off as possible and staggering it, and then a week that the whole organization's closed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens in the summer, which in the US is like, oh my goodness, so rare. Whereas, colleagues in Europe at my prior organization would just have a month off in the summer, and it was expected and known and baseline. So varying expectations for what it means to show up for the whole lives of employees, and even what kind of whole lives were allowed, just in terms of what this country demands of us, and our loved ones.
I love how you're structuring that. So the way that y'all are setting it up, just for our listeners to understand, is your organization currently is in the middle of what you are calling a 3-week slowdown, where for 2 weeks you stagger and have different employees taking off as much time as they can during that time. And then for the last week, the entire organization shuts down and is offline for the entire week. And it gives employees that chance to reset, recoup. Tell me about why 3 weeks.
Right. And that's the organization schedule, and everyone gets to also fiddle around with their own schedule differently. So I'll take a week off at the end afterwards. Lots of people will, but it gives us enough time so that enough people can get those 3 weeks. I think when people take time off in the first week, it's stress relief. You're going to get sick if you haven't gotten sick recently, or you're going to just be exhausted, or you're going to also relive everything that's frustrated you about work and let it go. And then in the second week, maybe you're on vacation and you actually read a book or two, or take a real long nap that you feel really good about.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the third week of vacation, we get to remember who we are outside of our jobs and do kind of large scale repositioning work in terms of how we relate to the world. And I think we need that. And I think it's horrendous that who will experience that before they retire, if anyone ever gets to retire anyways, that we can be denied 3 weeks of space. Our entire life is horrendous. And I want to make sure that we get that routinely. I think we need that routinely. I think we're better people when we are more aware of the lives we're living in the moment that we're living.
I love that. We're better people whenever we're more aware of the lives in the moment that we're living. Another way that you and I had talked that I, ever since our first conversation, haven't stopped thinking about, so I want to make sure we share it with our listeners as well, is this, specialist in peer healthcare that you've added to your organization. Tell me about that. Tell me about why.
Oh man, her name's Lauren Maurice. She's incredible. We talked with Lauren about creating a role we'd never seen before, which was how can I, as a person who gets healthcare from my organization, figure out what it means when my pharmacist says that medicine's not covered anymore, or when the surgeon I had a surgery for says, hey, by the way, you're not covered. We thought you were, but we're just gonna need you to pay up front now. Mm-hmm. Navigating insurance is baffling. It's a system that was built to be baffling, right? We get denials to appeal them as a part of how the system works. It is not designed to actually meet our needs. And my job I spent my whole life overwhelmed by my own insurance and not quite getting my own needs met. And then when I went into HR and started administering other people's benefits, I realized how many other people were having the exact same things happen to them. But it was like so overwhelming that no one even knew how to talk about it other than maybe an email to HR. And I don't know other HR people that often had time to sit with people and try and troubleshoot who do you call at our insurance company if the first people just say they can't help you or never answer their phone. Like, we don't resource most of our internal operations departments to fully meet the needs of an organization, much less what are not considered to be the needs of an organization, which just in general aren't considered, which is that the benefits we're providing are their own mazes to navigate that are often required for the benefits to be useful in life-saving ways or life-changing ways or ways that like allow us to sustain and maintain our lives in ways we're attempting to do, you know, whatever it is. So brought in someone to work one-on-one with staff when we're confused by things because we're not coming up with the answers ourselves, and the urgency around the problems we solve in our lives and the ways that lots of people that we hire for nonprofits prioritize their time. There's like this super common thing where we're all getting our work done, but not figuring out how to take care of our bodies and brains.
Mm-hmm.
As if our work is somehow not related to us being in this world and the bodies and brains that are in this world. And so that's nonsense. Doesn't need to happen. But to overcome that, we need to stop pretending the answer is we write a guide so each person individually can understand how the healthcare system works. Like, no, because up until that's what we've been doing, is saying, here's how to use your benefits. Here's the how to use your benefits guide. Here's the people to call for help. The how to use your benefits guide's like 30 pages long. It's great. If you're overwhelmed by health insurance, a 30-page guide that helps you, you know, say if A go here, if B go here, is not a solution that's workable. You're just still overwhelmed. You're gonna close the computer. You're not getting further on whatever it is that's like really necessary. And in HR administering benefits, I was just able to see that that kept happening to so many people. And our work is not, our work depends on us being okay. There is no organization without the people who are the organization who make up the work. And the barriers to being okay are really high. I expect they're going to get higher. I think our primary goal and directive is to address that as much as possible for our employees. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I expect we'll hire amazing people who will burn out or leave or look for something else or not be okay long enough surrounded by other people who are okay long enough for us to have transformative conversations with each other that shift how we do our work, see our work, change the world. You know, for our organization to be able to respond as fast as organizations need to shift requires individuals able to sit with and talk with each other and hold tension and move with tension in alignment together, which is not possible when we can't figure out how to get an allergy appointment for our kid because this person isn't in network anymore.
Absolutely. Wow. What a strong notion. What a major way to put your money where your mouth is, right? I mean, you started off this podcast telling me about how important this harm reduction piece is and taking away this harm that employees are feeling. And this is a real actionable step that you and your team have taken to execute on that harm reduction. How have you seen that impacted your organization?
I mean, what's incredible is that most of that now I don't see, rather than most of that being a thing I was seeing and like holding a stomach ache about the fact that this person's claim was denied. These people were quoted so much more than they should have been, or the surgeon said no, or like instead of me attempting to support staff to navigate a thing that we all know takes like 15 hours, 20 hours, 40 hours, like instead of us pretending somehow that that was going to be possible, that those hours would exist, we went and paid someone for those hours to help us and to move through that system alongside us.
Mhm.
So the big transformation for me is I don't have those stomach aches anymore.
Mhm.
I'm not worried that I don't have those stomach aches for some unethical reason and that I've just offloaded the stomach ache onto someone else.
Mhm.
Rather, it's now there is someone actually meeting a need. Like, how, the stomach aches were coming from unmet needs. It was hard to slow down enough to see that in such a way that presented a solution. But
Right.
the solution was we can find someone to meet those needs.
Right.
And we
Absolutely.
did, and it's incredible.
And now you and your organization and the people within your organization are even more freed up to focus on the big challenges and tasks at hand and find the next stomach ache to
Right.
think about and to focus on.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's
Yep.
amazing.
It's yep, and expanding, right, that support with using benefits. It's also support with using other benefits and navigating access needs around how do we as people with our brains in this moment show up at work, and what does that look like? Or if we take extended leave for sick leave, for wellness leave, how do we come back? How do we
Mhm.
come back sustainably and set ourselves up for success? How do we figure out what our limits are and what our needs are in a world that's never acknowledged that these needs could even exist? We get noise canceling headphones for staff when they join. If they say yes, they'd like to try them because the impact for so many people is so transformative.
Mhm.
But none of us knew it was a need because we could never meet it before because those are hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, what are all the ways we can find that we can make our lives easier? We can meet our needs so we can show up as more of ourselves with more of our cognitive, like brain power, like solving
Absolutely.
problems with each other rather than carrying around the energy of unsolved problems that are exhausting us, that transform how we are in all moments.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Wrapping up here, as unfortunately we're out of time. I feel like I could ask you about this all day, but what are one or two key insights from this conversation that you're hoping that our listeners can bring with them after listening to this podcast?
Um, I mean, what I go back to over and over is just this reassuring mantra that people are boring and that there are no problems that I am finding myself in that are not just very boring human problems that other people have experienced that are the result of people being boring humans with boring people like dynamics and whatever, right?
Mhm.
Which means we can find our way out of the messes we have found our way in.
Okay.
I'm committed to it. That we have not ever messed up in some fundamental way we can't get back from. And that conflict is something we deeply deserve and should move through together. But that saying how we move through conflict it just requires space it hasn't been having. We require a kind of space to be real people with real people stomach aches.
Absolutely. Moving through conflict requires space. What a beautiful and strong way to kind of end the conversation. Elliot, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture today. As a reminder for all the folks who are listening at AllVoices, we believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. We know that that's a requirement for companies to succeed overall.